The colors weren't just in the room anymore. They seeped inside his mind, bleeding venom into every lingering shadow. A bitter winter twilight seeped through the narrow, frost-lined windows of a sterile apartment perched high above the city's restless pulse. The air inside was sharp and thin, like inhaling shards of glass dissolving quietly on the tongue, the cold biting through his threadbare sweater with merciless precision. Shadows exploded and fractured around the room's sharp edges, walls, shelves, the cold lines of furniture, each surface a canvas upon which light and absence tangled in uneasy equilibrium. The space, stripped to black and white austerity, held crimson and cobalt-like bruises, accents deliberate and sharp, punctuation marks of order in a world built on control. Tonight, that control splintered beneath something unseen, like the moment when the last star vanishes behind storm clouds. He sat rigidly on the crimson chair, the sleek leather slick and unyielding beneath his trembling palms. His fingers drummed a nervous staccato rhythm, a brittle tattoo of anxiety that echoed faintly, swallowed by the distant pulse of traffic and the metallic rattle of failing heaters. The cold fluorescence overhead spilled down in harsh, sterile rivers, carving stark shadows that twitched and flickered with a life not their own. They stretched, elongating and twisting, tongues of color slipping beyond their bounds, sapphire flames licking the edges of vision, stains of red drowning out the white. His eyes searched desperately amid the shifting shapes, seeking a foothold in the chaos. "I know I'm not losing it," he whispered, voice cracked and fragile beneath the growing hush. But doubt slithered in, cold and slick, pressing against his skin like the encroaching draft sneaking beneath cracked glass. At first, the aberrations were subtle, a bleeding smear of cobalt crawling along the lifeless white wall, a shimmer caught and lost in the corner of his eye like a ghost fleeing the light. The crimson chair pulsed in his vision, a heartbeat made flesh, throbbing violently beneath him, an accusing wound glowing with unnatural heat. He blinked hard, the image fracturing, but the redness only deepened, alive and cruel, gnawing at the fragile edges of his sanity. He rose abruptly, the rough fabric of his clothes pricked against raw skin, a grounding sting in this melting world. His feet shuffled past black shelving lined with stark white ceramic bowls, cold and hollow like empty eye sockets staring into nothingness. The cobalt blue cabinet warped beneath the sick flicker of a failing bulb, darkening as if breathing, expanding and contracting, an exhalation of shadow pooling against its metal frame. His breath hitched, thickening with a metallic tang of urban smog sneaking past sterile walls like poison. Were these colors mocking him? Jeering at his fragile grip on reason? Paranoia coiled tighter, a serpent of smoke slipping between ribs, distorting air and the steady rhythm of his ribcage. Then, without warning, the walls dissolved, rippling into rivers of color, splintering and spiraling like a riotous storm trapped in glass. Vertigo seized his gut, a churning vortex of nausea cold enough to dissolve blood. He staggered, helpless, clutching the cold, unyielding edge of a table. His fingertips pressed into the swirling currents of cobalt that wove and crept, forming near figures just beyond comprehension, fleeting ghosts assembled from pigment and pain. "No, no, not real," he gasped, voice strangled under horror's grip. "None of this is real." But the hallucinations surged forth, crimson smears sharpened into jagged shards flashing with malice, slicing deep into the fractured mind behind his eyes. He crashed down onto the crimson chair, limbs trembling as if conveyed tremors ran through his bones. Heaving breath condensed in the cold air, heavy head swallowed by oppressive white light. Why me? What does this mean? He wondered aloud, voice ragged with despair. The acrid scent of fresh paint mingled with a faint tinge of burnt coffee. Sense of another life, a forgotten morning, bleeding into the sterile void. Outside, the city's indifferent dusk blurred away, leaving only an oppressive glow suffocating the room. Once a symphony of order and calm, now a massacre of nerve and reason, his mind unraveling as color invaded like a ravenous tide eroding the fragile barricades he'd so feverishly built around truth. Then, the third wave. A whisper hissed low from the cobalt cabinet, a buzzing growing louder, filling the air with an electric frost. Shadows bled from the paint, coalescing and fracturing in impossible rhythm, fractals caught between worlds, a maddening pulse in the dark. "I'm not crazy," he hissed, voice brittle as shattered glass. The silence swallowed his words whole, mocking, an empty echo of hollowness replying in its place. The apparition shattered and dissolved abruptly, leaving a void heavy with primal dread, like a black wound gouged into the fabric of the room. Colors collided violently, red bleeding into black, Black melting into white, tortured light twisting in kaleidoscopic chaos. The apartment's austerity shattered within seconds, order splintering like cracked ice underfoot. He screamed, a ragged, breaking sound clawing up his throat, clutching the sides of his head as words cascaded in visions before his eyes. Letters dripped like blood from color-drunk tongues, indecipherable but laced with urgency and threat. And then, silence. The clock on the wall trembled subtly, its face warping unnaturally, a smear of deep crimson oozing slowly down its hands like bleeding sand draining the last grains of time. Breathless, heart hammering like a trapped animal, he stared, watching colors recede but never fully vanish, a flicker of persistent blue haunting his shut eyelids. The danger had not fled, it lurked behind every fold of perception, waiting, patient and eternal. He rose, unsteady and hollow, winter's merciless chill biting through the window pane with ruthless finality. His eyes found the crimson chair, now cold and lifeless, yet alive in the fevered chambers of memory, a scar etched beneath skin. Was this collapse his undoing, or a terrible awakening? Between the fragile cages of reality and nightmare, the world bled and blurred, city lights blinked on like distant stars indifferent to human madness. He whispered softly into the void, voice cracked and raw. Is this the end, or just the beginning? If this story twisted your mind, share your thoughts and let us know. What do you see when the colors turn against you?